show it. So go ahead and get that going there. It's interesting.
Yeah, so actually it was made out of rice, individual rice, and she throws it up, and it goes from like a painting to that, and it's literally a split second slow mo, and it turns into something you wouldn't even be able to see anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of work for something to last 2 seconds.
It is. Like I wouldn't have the patience to do that. I don't think.
Yeah, and well, when we're talking about that, I was thinking these people do these like sandcastle things at the ocean. They even have contests, and they have these elaborate things. I mean,
that's one thing I've tried to make, and I can't. Like, I don't know how people envision it.
But they create masterpieces. They're like national competitions, and then the tide comes in. It's like, but why not? My attitude is make something that will last as long as possible. Most of the work I've done, well, it could be around 1,000 years from now, or not, but could well be. So
it's okay. We'll put it in a museum.
Well, really, seriously, the cars that I do, they're unless something happens to them, nobody's going to throw them out or drive them until they don't work anymore. They'll last until a fire or an earthquake or something happens, and that could be who knows how long. So yeah, which makes you feel kind of good. So okay, well, what else? Have we really figured everything out? Nothing less than work out.
What else do you talk about on these podcasts?
Okay. What do you? Never mind your personal future. What do you think the future is? Any guesses?
Well, I hope it's nothing like any of the movies I've seen.
You do seem to have a tendency to watch those
dystopian.
Which?
The dystopian movies.
Dystopian movies, yeah.
I mean, the only thing that I would want to become true, if it would in the future, is to make me a super soldier. Give me the super soldier serum, make me Captain America or something like that. I would greatly appreciate that.
Well, soldiers are there to kill people, aren't they? Is that what you really want?
Except Captain America, he only killed the bad guys.
Who's the bad guy? Because those bad guys think Captain America's the bad guy.
Yeah, but Captain America's better, so then the bad guys don't have a say in if they're the bad guys.
Well, that doesn't sound very inclusive to me at all, so I gotta tell you.
But I'd say, you never know what the future's gonna hold. And always is changing, I guess you could say, too. I feel like we're probably gonna have more machines take over, I guess, the world. AI.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe we'll have flying cars in the next 20 years or so.
I think we would. They've been talking about them for a long time.
And we'll have air traffic, not just regular traffic.
Yeah, but air traffic. There's a lot more room up there than there is in the roads.
Probably.
If they ever pull that off, I think that would be a good thing. That would change things a lot. But people talk about, we're on the verge of the machines taking over, but to a large extent, the machines have taken over. Just in my career as a woodworker, the improvements in the way things are processed in woodworking changed in the span of my career. But if you go farther back, there was no such thing as a power tool. Everything was by hand, which didn't mean they couldn't create beautiful stuff out of wood, but it took a while.
Yeah,
it took a long time, which is why only rich people had real furniture. Everybody else had sawed up a log or something, and that was their seat. So furniture, the way we think of it now, that everybody has furniture. Some people have beautiful furniture, some people just have functional furniture, but everybody's got furniture. Well, not until the Industrial Revolution and machinery that could just spit out, lumber and whatever you needed, to the point where they could make furniture cheap enough that the average person could own it. That's 150 years ago or so that the machines took over making furniture. Well, now we have furniture, so who's complaining? You couldn't make today's cars without advanced machinery, computerized machinery. You could not make those cars. I've worked on Model Ts. They're fun, but you don't want to have to get to work in one, You don't want to have to drive across the country in one. With the machinery they had at the time of the Model Ts, they couldn't make a modern car, even if they knew how. They didn't have the machinery and everything they needed to do it. So yeah, I don't mind machines taking over to a certain degree. And as far as, well, I will say something you may not be aware of, and a lot of people aren't. But at the time, and this is part of what Karl Marx was complaining about with the Communist Manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to the Industrial Revolution, with everything made by hand, obviously your job counted for something. You weren't. Why do I say that? I mean, a blacksmith wasn't displaced by a machine. A carpenter wasn't displaced by a machine. Whoever, whatever. Uh, Everybody's job really counted for something, and nobody was thrown out of a job by another guy having a job necessarily. Just because there was a new blacksmith didn't mean the old blacksmith lost his job or something.
Mm-hmm.
If that all makes sense. But then today we think of what jobs mean to us now, which didn't even exist back then. Even the idea of a job barely existed the way we think of it today. A factory, no such thing as a factory. They had workshops that might have 10 or 20 people making stuff by hand together. So there's a certain amount of sort of mass production to it, but it was still by hand, and everybody had an important job. So it wasn't an assembly line exactly. So now people think in terms of a factory, and everybody just like sticks this nut on that screw. That's their entire job. This nut goes on that screw or whatever, and it's dehumanizing, as Marx said. And I'm no fan of Marx, but he was right. And I've worked in such a factory, and it's like, oh, let me out of here.
See, I think too that by having like machines take over the work of humans, it kind of gives humans the chance to do something better. Like without machines, we probably wouldn't have. Like if you look back into the past, we've always evolved to something better. Like we've always
yeah, but not always. It's been in the last 150, 200 years, the Industrial Revolution. We go all the way back to before the Bible, and not a whole lot of changes took place. It's pretty much the same thing all the time. From one generation to the other, no real difference at all that anybody would notice. And now it's like you blink and a whole new technology is developed. You talk about AI is developing, which I think they can't even make these computers work right. I'm not really concerned about AI, but my point is things that has changed as far as what's a job, and we've become much less holistic. I think as far as never mind what my job is, what is my life? Because for a lot of people, their job and their life were essentially the same thing. You farmer, you tilled the field. That was your life. It's not what you did for 8 hours and then went home. But that was your home. Tailors lived above the tailor shop. He came down and sewed clothes and then went back upstairs. The idea that you go to a job, first of all, to do that, you need a car. Well, they didn't have cars. They had trolleys. Actually, trolleys kind of run parallel to the Industrial Revolution. Before the Industrial Revolution, Toby's having a little problem there. Before the Industrial Revolution, there weren't trolleys the way we think of a trolley. I mean, transportation barely existed, So all this stuff goes together to the point where now you think of a job as some separate entity from what your life is. And that is unfortunate. It's not terrible, but it's maybe a little unfortunate about a person feeling like their job depends on other people as opposed to just who you are and what you do. No, it's a different approach to things. So that's just my observation anyway. And as far as, jobs have been replaced, again, and I've read some books on this that my daughter Jo sent me from England. Very good books. I can't think of the author's name, but she observes that in Victorian times, as take textiles, for instance, because that's obvious. Imagine back in the day before the Industrial Revolution, if you wanted clothes, well, first thing you do is you spin some yarn. Well, first thing you do is you shear the sheep. Then you spin some yarn into thread on a spinning wheel. Then you weave that into cloth on your loom. Then you hand sew that into clothes, and that's how you have clothes. Kind of a tedious process. Or the flax, same idea. What's it? Flax comes from what plant? I forget. But anyway,
barley. No.
I knew. I should know that, but I forget. But anyway, same thing though. Or cotton. Same thing. Absolutely, cotton. Take the cottons, and then into thread, weave it on your loom, hand sew it, and that was a big part of a woman's life. And again, it wasn't a job; it was her life. It was just part of what she did. Well, then somebody figured out you can make thread with a machine that just just comes up with thread like, whoop, fast. And then they figured out how the machine can, machine operated looms. Which, by the way, you're my brother-in-law, Gene, so he's your uncle-in-law, whatever, great uncle-in-law, whatever, who unfortunately has died recently, not too long ago. But one of his jobs as an engineer was to design industrial looms. But anyway, so I know a little bit about that, and man, those suckers can weave cloth like you wouldn't believe. Just stuff flying out of there. Compared to a woman doing this back and forth with a shuttle. And so women had a choice. They were capable of making their own cloth, or they could go to the dry goods store and buy it. And you start doing the math. If it takes them all day to weave a yard of cloth, and they can go buy it at the dry goods store by doing an hour's worth of work at something, taking that money and buying a yard of cloth, they're 7 hours ahead by doing this work, getting paid, buying the cloth, as opposed to spending 8 hours making it by hand. So initially, nobody felt like they were losing a job just because these factories were springing up and there were all these jobs. It was actually making it easier for people. But then you get to a point where, well, we've got cloth, we got steel, we got all this stuff. It gets made. Now it starts to look like, when a new technology develops, it might eliminate jobs, and it has to a degree. Factory work in an auto assembly plant, they have robots putting cars together largely. There's still people there, but largely there are robots doing the things that people used to do. So jobs have been lost, but cars are gone. So it's not something you can really predict, okay, what next? But I do concern myself that more than before, previously you had to be a complete person. You had to have a lot of skills and a comprehension, having experience it of all the different things that it takes to just live your life. Now you have a job, and your job might be replaced, and so who are you? What do you count for in your own life, especially professionally? Look at the people, bureaucrats today that Trump is laying off and firing and messing with it all. And all these people say, hey, wait, this is my job. Well, maybe it's not their job. It's the government's, the employer. They created the jobs. It's not your job. You just work for the people who created the job. And that's true whether it's the government or anything else. So who are you? Who is an employee, really? As opposed to completely being self-sufficient and you don't work for anybody and nobody works for you. It's a whole different attitude.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Do we need AI to replace our thinking for us? I mean, AI is writing stuff. Now, I'm a writer, right? I'm a writer. Could AI write this book for me? No, not a chance. No. I don't care how good it gets. And by the way, it still sucks. I see AI write stuff, and I did a whole segment on one of my things on Individuals Unite, where I had a conversation, asked questions of an AI chatbot thing, and it was kind of impressive that it could do as much as it do, but it didn't have any ideas of its own. It said, I asked, something to the extent of where do you get your ideas? It said, we don't get ideas. We just refurbish what other people have said. So what's it really good for? AI can do super calculations and stuff. Basically, the math, any computer can do a whole lot better than we can do. So, hey, take advantage of that. But can it create? So far, no computer has ever created anything out of its own imagination because it doesn't have an imagination. And I don't know that it ever will. So I guess I'm saying if your job can be replaced by a computer, what is your job? And maybe you should find something more significant to do.
Yeah.
So that's just where I come out with that. And I have worked at a factory, not for very long, but for a month during the summer in school. And boy, it was absolutely the worst factory you'd ever want to have to work in anyway. But I thought, God, who would want to do that their whole life? Not just physically strenuous, but just mind-numbingly boring.
I think I would lose track. I feel like it's one of those things where it's like when you keep seeing the same thing, I feel like you just eventually your eyes will be able to lock onto it.
There are cases that you can take it the whole other direction. Something is so rote, so easy to do. And I've seen it. And there's people on an assembly line or something. They're right next to each other, and they're putting the screw in their bolt. But they can socialize. They can talk. Hey, how's your family? Yada yada. So it's almost they can be social in that sense, and not necessarily drudging mindless work. I guess the work is mindless, but that means your mind is free to do other things. So maybe so.
Yeah.
And I have to say that I talked about that, and then here I am. I had a woodworking business, but it wasn't a manufacturing business, and I deliberately didn't make it like that. I didn't want to own such a business. So there was never a dull moment in my work. Always challenges, always things that had to be seen to. And it also occurs to me there's a lot of people today, maybe you tell me, there's people that they've never been on a real farm. They've been on kid farms where you go pet the goats and stuff. Never been in a manufacturing plant. Never had any. I guess we go back again. You tell me, you show me, let me experience it. People never even barely even told about what farming really is, real farming or manufacturing. Of course, everybody's aware of it, but how many people really have any level of experience, even having been on a real farm or a real manufacturing plant? And so I'll ask you, I know you've been to.
I've been to the Toyota factory, and I like that one. I think it's definitely the closest to like a factory like that I've seen. And it definitely like they had have you been there?
I haven't been there, no.
It's actually very cool. It's very big.
Yeah, one of the things I intend to do, but I haven't done it.
Yeah, you should go there. But it's like this conveyor belt, and like it would bring like the certain car pieces like attached, and then we come to the different stations. They put on a bolt, or they'd like spray it or something. And but the thing is, like all those stations were like individualized. Like there was not like if you wanted to talk to someone, you can maybe talk to someone like diagonally, but it wasn't like
I'm not saying in every case that people working in a plant get to talk to each other. It does depend. There's been big changes in the way you assemble a car. Those assembly plants, and largely are computerized, not just robots sticking stuff on there, but the computer knows where every part is, every car is, what cars get what parts, because different cars get different things, different color, different features, add-ons. They used to have what they call it, a cut sheet, or what did they call it?
Tri-cut?
No, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But anyway, there'd be this chart that says when a person ordered a car and they want this trim package, this color, this interior, so forth, so on. Well, it'd all be there on a piece of paper, and it would be attached to the body of the car. And people look at it and say, well, is there anything here I'm supposed to be doing? Oh, they want this radio. There's your radio, So it's all just kind of like picked out like that. Now computers keep track of it all. This car needs a radio. We'll send it over there where they put radios in, so whatever. But most of the places I've been a lot of places that was part of my work, were more like job shops. So there wasn't I've been in manufacturing plants too. But anyway, job shops where I was a job shop. So everything is its own job from start to finish. It is its own thing. And it's a little more interesting that way. It takes more skill. And people do get to talk. They have to talk. Hey, what about this? This isn't going together. What are we going to do about it? So you get to talk. But I do worry that so many people have so many jobs that if they do their job well, or don't do their job well, it doesn't make that much difference to them. They all get paid the same. They all get paid the same.
That happens at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. And some people even get promotions when somebody else is really far more capable of whatever.
See, what I see happen is like political, like politics, like work politics. Like it's more based on relationships than it is work capabilities. Like obviously relationships are important, but it shouldn't be more important than can they do the job well.
Yeah, absolutely it happens. And that is unfortunate. It's, again, when you have a huge government, you have huge politics and you have huge favoritism, and absolutely it sucks. But you can have it in a small place too. A family-owned business, you got to say, okay, the mom and pop hired their son. Well, surprise, surprise, he's not really as good as some of the other people. I don't know. They've got the right, certainly, but I can see other employees saying, hey, wait a minute, I had earned my job. They just, here you are, son, so.
The most politics happen in family-owned like restaurants, because then it's like Yeah, their son is like the manager, and they don't even do anything. And then we're over here having to pick up the slack, and we're only like waiters, waitresses, or kitchen staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can happen that way. Yeah. So it does come down to people, I guess, no matter what. It comes down to the quality of the people. And as far as I'm concerned, any business, any government, any economy should be responsive to who the best people are and find ways to make sure they get ahead and they can be more effective and not move people along that should have no reason to be moved along, And we've become so centered on some imaginary idea of rights that, we all have the same rights to vote and to live someplace. But when it comes down to we all have the right to the same income, when some people work their butts off and some people just screw off, no, we don't have all those rights to the same income. In my lifetime, I'm seeing it's always been that way, but in my lifetime, I've seen it get worse and worse. And that can't end well. And that's what's wrong with Karl Marx and his Communist Manifesto. He treats everybody like they're the same when everybody's different. He was real good at predicting the past and saying, here's how it was when everybody could take care of themselves. Now we have industrialization and we're just cogs in the machine. He was largely right, and I don't disagree. But then he tried to predict the future where the people, and we are the future now, that he was imagining. And it didn't turn out the way he thought, but he imagined a future where the people, the proletariat, all band together and we're all going to work together and make things happen. Well, that never happens. It's never going to happen because we aren't all the same. We aren't all headed the same direction. We don't all try as hard. There has to be some differentiation of who makes the difference, and who doesn't. There's nothing wrong with a billionaire being a billionaire. If he created a business and it was an honest business and met needs and people buy his product and then he ends up being worth $1 billion, good for him. And understand, and this is important because a lot of people don't understand, when we say somebody's a billionaire, there's about zero chance he's got $1 billion in the bank or has ever seen $1 billion. It's just his business is worth $1 billion.
His net worth, right?
Yeah. And his business is worth $1 billion because of its potential to make money selling whatever it sells. But you say, well, if he's got $1 billion and we take $500 million from him to help everybody else, and he can still keep the other $500 million. Well, no, he doesn't have $1 billion. He's just a billionaire. There's a world of difference between the two. And people think you're going to, one of my gripes is, and I'm sure you've heard it, those rich people need to pay their fair share. What nobody ever says is, what's a fair share? They never say, here's how much a fair share is, because I asked them and nobody ever answers. Who says they aren't already paying their fair share? Because the rich generally pay a whole lot more than we do. Well, isn't that a fair share? And if you take money away from a business that is productive, if a business is capable of being worth $1 billion, it means it's doing something right. Do you really want to get in the middle of they're doing something right and take money and hand it to people who are just screwing with it? Not necessarily. So there's all those considerations that don't get considered enough. So
definitely.
Well, have you got anything?
Can't think of anything. You got anything else?
No. Okay. Well, I think we've had a good time here. We've learned some things about each other.
Definitely.
Glad we did this. Okay. All right. Well, we will sign off. So
maybe we'll have a part 2 sometime.
I hope so.
Read the book to see part 2.
Yeah. Okay. The book.
You read that.
Becca says so. So now you have to
read that. We'll make a part 2.
I got news for you. I'm thinking in terms of a sequel. So.
Oh, well, there you go.
There you go. Okay. Well, thanks to everybody.
Like and subscribe to get your books signed.
I don't have any way of signing books unless somebody wants to.
E-sign it.
We can find a way. If you really want to sign a book, I'll make it happen. So anyway, thanks for listening and or watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Okay. That was fun.